Celtic Frost, Cold Lake, an album hated by the band and most of the fans. My expectations for this album were insanely low. Everybody keeps telling me that it's a glam metal album, so I was expecting something as horrible and atrocious as Pantera's first 3 albums that nobody talks about. Fortunately, it goes nowhere near that, so it's a better album than I expected. Instead of being 100% glam metal, it's glam metal in its aesthetics, and it has more of a heavy metal vibe to it, but it also has plenty of thrash metal riffs too. Now, the end result is still horribly stupid, outdated, and embarrassing, but it's honestly more enjoyable than I expected it to be. My primary complaints for this album are: the vocals suck, the artwork sucks, the production sucks, the songs are generic, the songs are mostly mid-tempo, they're a little too upbeat for my taste, and they're a little too predictable. That's not to say that there aren't any good elements on this album, I just want to make this video to explain those good elements. But before I get into it, we gotta talk more about the artwork, because I still can't get over this. It really sucks. So, the intro is really stupid. Why? Because it's Celtic Frost! They do not need an intro. And then, Seduce Me Tonight kicks in. It's a feel-good song with a really fun solo. Overall, it's an enjoyable song. It's one of the highlights on the album. Petty Obsessions would come next, and it's the first of many mid-tempo songs on this album. It's a thrash metal song, so there are still elements of the old Celtic Frost on this album. Now, my favorite riffs from this song are the riffs that follow the guitar solo. Now, a few seconds ago, I said that this was the first of many mid-tempo songs on this album. Believe me when I say that it's most of the album. Do not expect a lot of speed. Once they were Eagles, it starts off with your traditional thrash metal double bass drums, and then it goes into steady headbanging. It's your standard glam metal song circa Kiss Animalize. It even has the long, loud guitar solo to boot. The song Cherry Orchard starts off the way a typical Celtic Frost album would start. It's actually kind of brutal. But then the rest of the song had to happen. At this point in the album, more than ever, you will notice that had the production been better, it would have been heavier. It's like it changed into a different song after the intro. Also, the female vocals come out of nowhere. Think of the female vocals that were used on Ministry's first album, and how those vocals came out of nowhere. That's kind of like what it is here. It's a little too bad that the gallery hasn't been released yet, because that would have been a better example. Juices Like Wine is terrible. It sounds like a really bad Iron Maiden cover. I find that it's a bit too happy for me. In fact, that's the big problem with most of the songs on this album, is that they're a bit too happy for my enjoyment. But you gotta remember that this is also coming from a huge Godflesh fan. It's interesting how in their early works they talked about all kinds of black arts and evil things, and now they're reduced to lyrics such as earning dreams, we blind our eyes, challenging secrets, ancient the cries? In fact, the lyrics on Dance Sleazy are also stupid. They ruin a great thrash song. Why would you do this, Celtic Frost? No wonder you couldn't stay together. In fact, you know what? That's also one of the bigger problems with this album, is that the lyrics are stupid. Roses with Thorns. A bit anticlimactic, because if you've heard the songs from the middle of the album, then you know what this one sounds like. You know, I really wish that I could describe to you more in depth what these songs sound like, but how else do you describe glam/heavy metal from the 1980s? Okay, let me think. They don't sound like Pantera's first 3 albums, and they don't sound like Poison either, so think of a more Rat-sounding album. I don't listen to any Rat, though. But in all honesty, it's actually not that terrible of an album, but it's a really terrible Celtic Frost album. The band needed to experiment, and they had nothing to lose by doing this album, but they had nothing to gain by doing it either. I mean, they were already considered gods of the underground metal world. To Megatherion was a landmark album, and Into the Pandemonium was really awesome. So this would amplify the strangeness that Cold Lake would end up being. I mean, the main problems I had are, the songs are too predictable, they're too generic, the production sucks, the artwork sucks, the vocals suck, the lyrics are stupid, and generally the band just sounded like they weren't there. Maybe I could have forgiven some of these problems had the production been better, but it doesn't sound heavy. It sounds really outdated and weak. And there are some great riffs and great moments and great songs on the album, but you don't get to feel the impact of them because the production just isn't big enough or realistic enough. And as a result, the album has aged horribly. Regardless, there are still a few good songs up here, and had those few songs been released as an EP instead of a full album, maybe that would have been better. It's definitely not essential listening, but it's also not quite the abomination that everybody makes it out to be. All I have to say is thank the powers that be that Vanity Nemesis would come next.